I think the extent of your influence, and to me, influence and leadership are one and the same. The extent of your influence depends on really how much care and concern you actually have for other people. And so for me, I define success as the success of those people reporting to me. When they're successful, I'm successful.
This is Keys to the Shop, episode number 13, a masterclass on leadership and management with Eva Attia of Portland Roasting Coffee. Hey everybody, and welcome to Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. I'm glad you joined me today because this episode is going to be packed with amazing information, tips, and advice of all sorts that's going to help you be a great manager and a great leader. We call this episode a masterclass on leadership and management because we have a master of both of those things with us for today's episode. We're talking with Eva Attia, the Director of Retail Operations at Portland Roasting Coffee in Portland, Oregon. Eva brings a ton of experience to the table today. She has spent 16 of her now 20 years in professional coffee at Peet's Coffee and Tea, where she worked her way all the way up from assistant manager to director of retail operations. So quite a big climb there, and she oversaw about 70 stores in 6 different states. At Peet's, she managed district managers, and she was responsible for leadership development, store operations, quality and service. She was also the project leader and an initiator of an annual company-wide internal barista competition that continues to run to this day. She also won the Jerry Baldwin Award, which was a company-wide award for leadership and management. And on top of all that, she had the lowest rate of turnover in her area and consistently had the highest customer service scores in all of the company. She's now working with the fine folks over there at Portland Roasting Coffee as the Director of Retail Operations, where she is over their now 4 retail stores and is having a great time over there with those folks. And this is just one incredible woman. I really have to tell you, it was a true honor to get to talk to her and learn from her experiences and hear her story. And I think you're just going to love this as much as I did. So and this may be one of those episodes where you're going to want to listen a few times just to make sure you get all you can from it. So, all right, great. Okay, let's get ready here because now is time to bring you to my interview with Eva Attia. Eva Attia, welcome to the show. I'm really just honored to have you here. Honestly, you've been spoken so highly of by our past guest, Nathaniel May, who is one of your coworkers at Portland Roasting Coffee. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into the topic today on leadership and management. You've been doing this professional coffee thing for 20 years now, and a large portion of that time has been spent with Peet's Coffee and Tea. And you've got such great experience with multi-unit retail, things we're going to dive into later in the episode. But you're the Director of Retail Operations for Portland Roasting Coffee, and in your career, it seems that you just hit the ground running with management right from the start. How did you get into coffee? Was it you got into coffee and then thought management was the place for you in coffee, or were you already pursuing management and then kind of fell in love with coffee?
Well, I fell in love with drinking coffee when I was, it was right after high school, actually, and I was working in Ecuador. I was there doing some community sanitation projects. And we were in a really poor village, and every day we would go to somebody's house, a new person's house, and they would serve us a cup of coffee. Not necessarily how I drink it now. It was very, very sweet with milk. But it was a great starter cup for a teenager. And the whole ritual and the daily cup of coffee was something that I came to love. And so when I went to college, I needed a job, and I got a job in coffee. It was actually a place called the Coffee House, which was the big food service and coffee place on our campus. And so I started working in the coffee area then, both brewing coffee and doing espresso. And I just really enjoyed it. And so after I graduated, I tried a few different jobs, but I ended up coming back to coffee. And some of the people I had met in college who worked at the coffee house had begun working in San Francisco in one of the Pete's locations. And I went and visited them there and, decided to apply myself. And from that point on, I had a little bit of experience in management because I also worked at a video store as an assistant manager. So I got hired at Pete's as an assistant manager and then sort of worked my way up from there. So coffee love first and management followed.
That's awesome. And you've held so many different positions in Pete's. You went from district manager, I think, was your first role. Is that correct?
I went from assistant manager to store manager to district manager to regional manager to director of retail operations.
So really applying yourself. Holy cow. I think that's fascinating. So what was that like? I think at one point you were managing, you went from, going from the coffee house on campus to later in your career managing 70 Pete's locations. What was that like?
That was great. That was really fun. I was fortunate enough, my region, it was called the expansion region because I had all of the stores that were outside of the Bay Area, which is where Pete's is predominant, or at the time Pete's was predominantly located. And then I had 5 districts in Northern California as well. So I got to travel to 6 different states. And I was very fortunate in that they're all cities in the states that I loved. So they were really fun to visit. And, at the time when I had that amount of stores, I was managing district managers, which was probably my most favorite thing to do that I've done so far. Because that's a whole different skill set, working with that level of coffee professional. And, you're working with somebody whose job it is to get results through others, and you're even more removed. So you really have to sort of hone your leadership skills and ensure that, if you have 70 stores, your visits need to be highly impactful because you are in each location for such a limited amount of time. And so what you choose to talk about, what you choose to focus on, and where your attention goes is what sticks. So you have to be purposeful,
Yeah, I mean, that's not 70 stores, but, for my end of the profession is similar to where you are now in terms of number of stores. Having to manage managers means exactly like you said, that impact has to travel into the baristas that work at the store through the manager that you talk to, and the targeted information that you give them. I mean, I imagine you have to know very well each person you're directly responsible for, who reports directly to you. How did you keep up with the knowledge of those individuals and knowing how to manage? Because you really can't do the same thing for everybody.
Well, I think when I hire somebody, I start out by spending a lot of time with them. Also, I guess one benefit of having a really expansive geography is when you do go on a visit, it's very concentrated time with that person. So, they'd often pick me up from the airport, or at least we'd meet somewhere, and I'd drive around in the car with them. And so our car time was important in addition to our store time. But being able to sit in the car with someone and debrief on, what just happened in the store and what the priorities are was great. And, sort of getting to know somebody, taking them out to lunch. So I would spend a lot of time with the person, especially when they were in training. Outside of that, and having several district managers, all who lived in different cities, it was important to me to build a team and not just have like a collection of individuals. And so in an effort to do that, in an effort to get them talking with each other and sharing their ideas and best practices with each other, I set up a weekly conference call where we would, talk about results, but we would also just share, what each person was focused on, what their best practices were, giving each other tips. It was kind of a time for them to just leverage each other and the skills that each one had, because each member of my team brought something unique to the table. And so finding different creative ways, we had a monthly meeting that was sort of all day. Because people had to travel to it, we'd often have, group dinners. But, then pairing people up with each other was a good way to kind of connect everybody. But, it's important to me, especially considering how much time everybody spends at work in their life. It's important to me to like the people I work with, because that makes having the job way more fun. And, when you spend a lot of time with somebody, genuinely liking them really, really helps that process.
I imagine the information that you share in your visits goes a lot farther when you've got that kind of rapport built up with your team.
It does. And it also, I used to kind of joke and refer to it as, your like bank account, so to speak. And, when you're putting those deposits in and investing in people and spending the time, it does allow you to here and there make that withdrawal. If something's urgent, or if you just need something done, you can pick up the phone and sort of just say, this is how it's going to be. We'll talk about it further later. And, it gives you, it builds that foundation off of which you can expect more, I think, out of somebody, and know that they'll trust that what you're asking of them is something that there's a reason behind.
Sure. It sounds a lot like a servant leadership model.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that. I think that, anybody who sort of practices that kind of leadership is generally somebody who is confident and secure in their position and role, as well as sort of has the right priorities and places the right amount of value on the people that report to them.
One of our past episodes, we were talking about how the staff are almost like the customers of the, I don't know, the store, the organization. It's like you're serving them the way that their baristas are serving customers, and building the kind of rapport that you're talking about by, this deposit of just positive energy and effort and sacrifice in their life. It reminds me a lot of a book. I'm not sure if you've heard of the 5 love languages. It's been passed around quite a bit. Yeah.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but I've heard quite a bit about it.
Yeah. The analogy they use is similar. It talks about, there's you fill up this reservoir, this bank account of good things. And it just is this nice, I don't know how to say, it's this virtuous cycle of goodwill between you and your direct reports. And that was going to be my question earlier on, was if I was picking you up from the airport, and you were my manager and we had this like focused meeting, I would be intimidated. Like I'm picking up, the boss at the airport, and we're going to talk about my store. We're going to do all these things. Do you feel like your conference call and your posture towards your direct reports was, you kind of cut some of that tension significantly?
I do. I definitely think it did. I think spending time with people breaks down some of those barriers. I was really fortunate in that, I would say that at the time that I had quite a few stores, I think I had 8 district managers, and I think 4 or 5 of them had reported to me for more than 10 years. And so,
wow.
So I also had the benefit of long-term relationships and some of them, had possibly reported to me indirectly. They may have started, as an assistant manager or a store manager that I saw potential in and would work with, and ended up promoting them. I'm thinking of a couple of people in particular who ended up directly reporting to me towards the end of my time there. And once somebody sees that you have their best interests in mind, and that, the feedback that you give them and the improvement that they make has a direct correlation with their success in their career, they will trust you, and they will be, more open to coaching and feedback from you, as well as really help sell your message to their own team.
Nice.
Because that's what needs to happen, really.
Yeah, you can't control, like, the culture of the shop is removed from your position by 2 positions, right? And
right.
So that it has to translate to this positive forward moving culture in the shop. And I wonder, now you've got 4 stores, right? At Portland Roasting?
I do. Yeah, 4.
So how has that transition been from all of these stores to 4 stores, where you are probably in so much more direct connection with the people in the stores and the managers?
I admit it's been a little bit hard, but part of what made it slightly easier is I took a really nice long break in the middle. So I left Pete's and then didn't work outside of doing a little bit of consulting work for 3 years, which I realize is a luxury. But I had some personal reasons, some family things that happened that also sort of put work-life balance into perspective for me. I had been working quite a bit for a while, and I realized that I wanted to work at a company that was a little bit more local. And as much as I really, really loved traveling for, the 10 plus years that I did at Pete's, it can sort of tire you out after a certain point, especially when you're changing time zones often. So I was looking for somewhere that was local, and I was looking for somewhere that in those 3 years, I picked up a ton of new hobbies and interests, and somewhere that I could keep doing those.
Nice.
Yeah. And so Portland Roasting sort of became that perfect fit for me, where I had learned a lot at Pete's, and I loved it, and was able to take everything I knew about retail and managing people, and building teams and building stores, and apply them in a company that essentially had none,
Sure.
and start doing that. So.
And it seems like it's gone pretty well for you there.
So far, so good. Yeah. Last year we opened 3 stores in the Portland airport.
Wow.
Really close together. And, I think in the moment it's hard. There's a lot of physical work, and there's a lot of sort of scrambling to pull people together. But now we're not quite, in the middle of July, it will be about a year since we opened the first one. And now it's, the dust is settling, and it's that point where you start to really see things start to hum,
Yeah.
Things are coming together. The teams are starting to gel, I have the right managers, and we're just going to move forward. So it's sort of turning into that more, I guess, rewarding portion of the job rather than the just busy part of the job.
Oh yeah, that's I love that feeling when there's this challenge before you and everyone's a little bit wide-eyed. Everyone's kind of on a hair trigger, and all of a sudden the things shift and the momentum changes. I was telling our managers here that developing baristas, and I suppose this is true for developing managers too, is kind of like here's like the roasting nerdy talk, like the endothermic time that the green bean is absorbing all this energy, and then it turns into exothermic and starts giving its own energy, is this hump that a shop goes over, or a barista does, when they start really coming into their own and making this culture happen, and you're just kind of like watching it. That must be a real beautiful thing to see these stores get into that momentum.
Yeah, that's the exact word I would use. There's this author actually that I really love, John Maxwell, and he writes the laws of leadership, and one of them is the law of momentum. And that basically says that, once you get going and once you have that momentum, results come so much more easily, and you just can't compare to that. So that's the goal.
What drives you right now? Like all of these years in coffee, sometimes what we're motivated by when we first start versus what we're motivated now changes. But what's kind of the driving force behind your continuance in professional coffee?
Well, I find it a really effective and satisfying backdrop to doing what I've come to love more, which is developing people. I think I got into coffee because I truly love it. I drink it every day, and I drink it many times a day, and that's never gone away. And
all right,
I've come to realize over, 20 years, I think I thought I knew a lot about coffee, 3 or 4 years in, and now I feel like I know nothing. The more I know, the more I realize there's so much information out there. There's so much you can know about coffee. But the one thing that it does do is it connects people who could be different on every single other level, culturally, internationally, people from all walks of life. There's this connection that people can get through coffee. Cafes are a location where people go and meet up and connect. And I love that about it. I love the kinds of people that are attracted to the coffee industry, from, the coffee nerds to, the new baristas to people who have been, roasting for a long time, like all of it. I've always loved all of it. And I love working in retail in a business where I can definitely stand behind the product. All that being said, though, I realized over time that what I really love to do is to have that foundation and backdrop. But my passion, I guess, is in watching people grow and develop and get better and better themselves. And so I think the industry is perfect for that type of thing, but the marriage of the two is what gets me to work every day.
So you have this thread of developing people, it sounds like, through your career, just wanting to break down those walls of, I'm the boss, you're the employee, in a sense, like building rapport with people at Pete's and having that conference call, just connecting people, helping them network. And now you're in this position where it's just your driving force, even more so than ever, like connecting and developing people to this common thing that we all enjoy together. One of the things that you were telling me about that I think attests to this was this competition that you started while at Pete's. And I think we all know that competition brings people together like nothing else. And it sounds like that was kind of a labor of love. I wonder if you can describe a little bit about how that came about and what was that like?
Sure. Yeah, that was awesome, actually, and probably one of the most enjoyable things I did. I guess at the time, so when I started at Pete's, there were only 20 some odd stores. And, it's a lot easier to control the quality of everything when you're smaller. And, when I left, there were about 200. And so somewhere in that range when we were between, I don't know, 125 to 150 stores or so, I, along with a couple of other people, really wanted to come up with a way to do two things. Or at least my goal was two things. I think their goal was mostly to improve coffee quality. In the position I was in, I absolutely wanted to do that. Coffee quality specifically at the bar. Because coffee quality in terms of like our beans that we sold, that was spot on. I also wanted to improve retention across the board, and improve, I guess the sense, the barista is that person who is customer facing and who truly has the biggest impact on your business. If that person is highly engaged and really good at their job, your job is that much easier and your business will grow. So keeping people and having them feel recognized and rewarded and feeling like, their job is important and there's purpose in what they're doing is key. And so we decided to at first pilot and then launch this internal nationwide barista competition. In order to do that, because part of our goal was to connect the people in our company to the greater barista community, in the US and then in the world. So we all went out and did our homework. So, each of us went and got certified to judge regional competitions. One of the guys that was working on this project with me actually ended up becoming a certified world judge. I think he was a head judge actually. So
really?
Took it. Yeah. So we learned everything we could about how barista competitions were run outside of our company. And then, took score sheets and made very modest changes to them because we wanted our competition to be, if somebody were interested in competing in, the USBC, that they would have gone through something that was very, very closely resembling exactly what they would go through there and was judged and scored in the exact same way so they would be very well practiced. So we did that. We built these score sheets. It had a huge benefit in creating this common language and commonly understood set of standards around, when we say a good shot of espresso, when we talk about a good cappuccino, what exactly does that look like? How is that connected to service and cleanliness and all of the different components that both a technical judge looks at and a sensory judge? And it worked. That the thing is I was go into each of my stores and I loved the fact that when I would go in, there would always be somebody who was at the bar who was really excited to just make me a shot of espresso or make me a drink, and then specifically ask for feedback and actually want, critical feedback with the goal of improving.
So awesome.
And yeah, it was. And seeing people who had been sort of disengaged participate in it and then stick around and coach and mentor other baristas that was probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And I was really happy to see, I was reading an article online the other day, and it was something like 10 things you didn't know about Pete's Coffee and Tea. And in it was, they have a national barista competition. And so I was happy to see that is still going on. Yes.
It lives on.
It does. Yes.
So that positively affected the engagement of the baristas and the retention and the quality of your bars.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's awesome. And it probably makes it a lot easier for your managers to manage in an environment where people are engaged and willing to receive critical feedback. If there has to be like, hey, the standard operating procedure for this is XYZ, it's having that little talk with somebody is a lot easier in an environment where critical feedback is just the norm, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The other cool thing is that it kind of blends together two things that I think are really important at work. One is taking your job seriously, and the other is having fun. I don't know a lot of people that got into the coffee industry because they didn't think it could be at least a little bit fun. And I'm a big proponent of taking the job seriously and doing your best, but I also think I know I got into it because coffee is awesome, and you can have a lot of fun at work when things are going well. And this competition functioned as that. It was really, really fun, and it also had really big impact, and meant that we were taking coffee quality and trying to grow, but really like not losing focus on the important things that built the company up in the first place, which is focusing on quality.
So awesome. We all want to be successful like this. I think any of us who are just in leadership and in management, and maybe we're thinking about getting into leadership or management from our current position, we want to be able to do well. And in order to sort of narrow down all of the things that we could focus on, I think it would be helpful if we talked about you and I talked about 5 things that I think you are just really big on. They're like critical things that a future leader or current leader needs to do to be effective, to be a great manager. And the first thing that you talk about is the selection of people. You say that we should select carefully. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. I think it's pretty common knowledge that you're not going to get anywhere without the right people, but I really emphasize to people the selection process, because the worst thing you can do is not spend enough time in the selection process and find yourself with buyer's remorse. And that's not fun for anyone. So doing diligence to, during the interview, asking open-ended questions and being really, really thorough in asking those follow-up questions and really waiting to get the answer that you're asking for. There's sometimes a tendency or a temptation, seen it in a lot of people, and I've even done it myself, to, I don't know, 15 minutes in, decide you really like this person. And also you really have an urgent need to get somebody in place. Like, that'll make your life so much easier if you could just hire this person. And so halfway through, you start sort of still asking those open-ended questions, but feeding them the answer, sort of guiding them to the answer you want so that you can feel even better about the interview. And so whether it's, saying, for example, did you ever do such and such, or just kind of giving them a hint as to what you're looking for. And, it's like you've decided in the middle that you're hiring them, but you're going through the motions of finishing the interview. So true. I admit I am a huge skeptic. Like, my approach to interviewing is, tell me why I should hire you. You need to convince me to hire you. And you need to work for it. And I'm working for it too. I mean, I don't actually set the tone of the interview to be such, but in my mind, I need to be convinced to hire somebody, because as soon as I do, I'm committed to them. Once I've made my decision that they're going to be on my team, they're on my team, and I need to spend my time investing in them and setting them up for success. I also believe in hiring people who I think are going to be great, and I think who can do my job better than me. not only does that make for a high-performing team, but it allows me to be on vacation a whole lot more,
There you
which
go.
I think is important. And I also think once you do hire somebody, something I like to do is tell them why. Tell them what value I believe they're going to bring to our group and to the organization. The other portion of that is selecting carefully for your team. When you have a group of people, you should, in my mind, I like to hire diversely, people with very different strengths and weaknesses, and people who will push each other and grow. In order to do that, I often will involve my team in the interview process, depending on where they are developmentally, but to get their buy-in and to sort of make it so that when that person is hired, they have an advocate on my team already, somebody who gave a yes vote.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the last piece of that is just managing team dynamics. Like when you bring somebody in, setting them up with the right people, connecting them, rewarding the people who encourage others, and really getting, working towards a cohesive team. I like healthy competition amongst my team members, but ultimately having a sense of team pride is what has gotten my group ahead. They want to be the best they can be, but as a whole, many minds together function better than just one. And so investing in the group as well has been what I have found most rewarding in terms of getting results.
That's awesome. And you're hiring diversely for strengths and weaknesses, which means that each person has different needs that they need, to have met in some form, at work by those who are responsible for them, which, leads us to the second thing here for if we want to be great leaders and managers is you got to treat people differently. And I think some people might have a different idea, like, aren't we supposed to treat everyone equally? I wonder if you could explain that.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to treat people differently. That's not mutually exclusive of treating people fairly. I'm a big fan of being fair, but I think that involves treating people differently because everybody is unique and an individual, and everybody comes to the table with different strengths. And spending the time to get to know the person and truly meeting people where they are. One I guess training or training that I went through that had a huge benefit to me was called situational leadership. And that model kind of helps navigate a diverse workforce and is adaptable to any circumstance. So as a tool, I find it effective to influence and lead in any situation. Basically, it helps you structure the amount of guidance and direction you give people on a particular task, and it's flexible. So you sort of take each person where they are at and determine, do you need more direction or do you need more support? Have you done this a lot and you just need me to get out of your way? Or is this the first time you've done this and I need to walk you through the steps in order for you to be successful? And you're not as a whole in one spot. It's task by task or circumstance by circumstance. And so I think looking at each person and each situation they're in differently is the best way to ensure each person is able to get the results that you want and they want.
Now, is that something that everyone is aware that you're doing, or is that something you kind of just do? Like, I imagine if everyone's aware, we're all on different trajectories in terms of how, or not trajectories, but how we're managed and how we're being engaged, it would make me feel pretty special. Like here's somebody who's a higher up, of a boss of mine treating me as I need to be treated. Have you found that approach builds the kind of rapport that you need to get buy-in from a team?
I do, yeah. Actually, every district manager on my team and I went through that same training. So it was interesting because you all sort of start talking with that verbiage. But the transparency of it, I found was really helpful. And there is a part of that I think is just innate. If you're a good leader, you sort of know that people have different needs and you know that people are individuals and you should work with them differently. But this formalizes it. And I found it to be really beneficial because, if you have somebody who is in many ways a top performer and they do everything really well, sometimes you'll find that if you give them a new task, you treat them as if they've done that time after time after time, because in general, that's where they are. This forces you to sort of rethink that and think, just because this is my top performer doesn't mean that they know how to do this particular task. I need to treat them as if they're very new and walk them through this. And, probably next time they'll be able to do it in a very different, with different needs. But it takes away this sort of blanket approach to an individual and makes sure that you're hyper aware of each and everything you ask them to do, being, you have to think about their needs.
Makes me think that like assumption, as you approach a person and managing them, assumption is kind of like the precursor to neglect.
Totally. You're so right. Yep.
And it's hard to think about like neglect as something that you're actively doing because it sounds so mean. Right. But I think what you're hitting on here is so important. It's like there's this benign sort of neglect that is born out of a subconscious desire for convenience and efficiency or self-efficacy or whatever it is. Like you can handle it because I want you to handle it. Just like that person that you said you really want to hire them, so you kind of feed them the answers. Kind of lives on in the way you manage them later on, maybe.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. That's beautifully put. Yeah.
The third thing that you were talking about to be a great leader was to have high expectations, which I think dovetails nicely with what we're talking about right now. Each person is going to have different levels of ambition, and I think you have your level of what you expect from them of, I know you can do this, and maybe you think that you can do something else. Like, how do you exercise the communication of expectations effectively to people you're responsible for?
I think you need to be really clear with your expectations. I often tell people that I'm a hard grader. I like them to know that when they do meet expectations, that the bar is high. I think that also instills pride in what they're doing. But in order to have high expectations, one needs to be very, very clear what they are and define what success looks like. So this is what I expect of you. I believe you can do this. I'm here to help you, whether that is removing obstacles for you, just getting out of your way, or hand-holding you, depending on who the person is. But either way, I truly believe that when it comes to expectations, there's no greater good or bad to the self-fulfilling prophecy idea, in that, if I don't believe you will do this or can do this, you probably won't. You will meet that expectation. And if I do believe you can and will, it's highly likely that you will. And my job is to help people get there. So, I need to build accountability into everything that's done, because that rewards those who are top performers. That ensures that, people feel like their work is noticed and when they do a good job, it is valued and appreciated. And you get what you reward, really.
Yes.
And then celebrate the wins. When sometimes we get too focused on just moving right along. And, if you have a specific goal and your team helps you achieve it, it's important to take a moment and to really celebrate that before you set the bar higher.
I love that. That's awesome. We have such a tendency to believe that a majority of our job is to just find what's wrong, and it disallows us from being positive people in our positions of authority, almost neglecting the idea of this person needs affirmation. So I love where you're going with that, rewarding people for their great work and paying attention to it. So, I mean, you're a busy manager, and there are a lot of people that have so much on their plate. How do you manage to keep track of those wins? Because it is easier for us to remember the things that happened because there's a customer complaint or maybe there's a lot of things helping us remember the negative. How do you kind of balance that and remember the positive to reward it?
Well, I think a little bit is, if you're going to visit a cafe or a store, planning your visit. I know particularly when I used to have a lot more stores, I had to be really intentional about what I chose to speak on. So it was important to me that at some point during my visit, I made sure that I looked at drink quality and actually talked to somebody who was making drinks and gave them positive feedback, and remembered if they had made me my drink last time that I was able to speak to improvement or not. I need to take notes. My memory is not that good. So I have to jot down notes. And I'll often figure out when I'm going to be somewhere next. And on that calendar day, put a note in there that, remember to do this.
Nice.
Because I realized a long time ago that if we're relying on my memory, nothing's going to happen there. So,
amen. That's I'm right there with you.
So I think being really purposeful, and I think talking about the things that matter. It's easier to remember if you have common things that you touch on, you're going to remember to follow up on them. And every once in a while, I ask a person to remind me themselves. We're all human. And if it's really important, I do write it down, and I do put a note somewhere to remind me of it again. But I often ask them, to make sure that we discuss this next time,
Yes. Oh, that's great. I mean, anything that helps us follow through with that goodwill and those good intentions is better than just not following through at all. Now,
absolutely.
So the first thing, 5 really key areas for us to be great leaders and managers was to select carefully who we hire and who we put on teams. Then the second thing was we want to treat people differently and manage them as individuals according to our knowledge of them as just unique people under our care. And then have high expectations for those people that make up your team. The fourth thing here is show courage, which is probably more needed than we think when we're in leadership positions. I wonder what you mean by show courage.
Yeah. Well, when you're a leader, whether you like it or not, eyes are on you, and people notice if you're having a bad day. People notice if you're having a good day. And it's important to remember that what you say and do does have impact. But in terms of courage, I think courage inspires other people. I think it helps them buy into what it is you're asking them to do. Courage to me is the act of making something right, and not just sort of glossing over things, not looking for a quick fix, but to do the right thing, and to do the right thing in challenging times. It's easy to do the right thing when things are easy. I think being fearful is really limiting. And when you limit your team, that's a huge disservice to them. And the easiest examples I can think of are situations where there's conflict or there's confrontation. It's so easy for us to, focus on something that we can fix really easily, like a piece of equipment or making a phone call to get something done. But truly going after, looking for root cause analysis in any given situation and asking enough questions to determine what an issue is, encouraging people to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear, I think is vitally important to being able to lead effectively. I also think that as a person and as a leader, doing things that scare you is how you improve yourself as a human being and as a leader. So getting outside your comfort zone is a great way to grow as an individual and to show your team that you're willing to take that on and you're willing to go to bat for them, or you're willing to ask things that are hard or deal with situations that you could allow to simmer,
Yeah, I mean, kind of lean into the awkwardness, lean into the painful part of it against your better judgment. Like maybe there's air quotes around better in that phrase. Your better judgment is to ignore your better judgment and just do it. So specifically speaking about, dealing with people, I like what you said about equipment, because we do focus on that really heavily, because our industry is one that has a lot of trappings. We've got new espresso machines that come out that they don't give us problems. They don't come in late for work. Sometimes they don't work, but there's a manual for that, and there isn't really a manual for each person that you're with, which is why, like you're saying, we need to be really highly engaged with these folks and developing this rapport and relationship with them. And that brings us to the fifth thing here on the list, is to get ahead yourself. You have to put other people first. And that seems to be a theme of your career. And I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think that what ends up getting you ahead, whether you're really going after something or it's a little bit more passive, but is this, I believe that if you love your position less than you love your people, everything will fall into place. You need to be aware of other people's needs, and then when you are aware of them, see them as important, and then prioritize them over your own agenda. It's thinking about treating other people how you want to be treated, really listening to other people and being kind, because I think the extent of your influence, and to me, influence and leadership are one and the same. The extent of your influence depends on really how much care and concern you actually have for other people. And so for me, I define success as the success of those people reporting to me. When they're successful, I'm successful. When I invest in them, the results follow. If I have my own agenda that I'm working on, and I have done that at times in my career, I might get some incremental gain there, but it doesn't come as in a way that's as satisfying as when I working at serving others.
what if you are not in that position of being a kind of a people first leader? Like you said just really well, if you love your position less than you love your people, it'll all fall into place. What if we were listening to this and we find, man, I love my position, apparently, more than I love my people. Like I'm obsessed with my goals and I'm trying to meet numbers, but we feel like I want to change that. Like, how do I right that ship?
I mean, I guess the first question I would ask somebody is, if you really love your position, why do you love it? I mean, I think it's hard to be a manager of people and really love your job if you don't care about your people. So there might be some piece of that that's just sort of reframing. However, I have worked with people who I feel like are definitely much more invested in their own career trajectory than they are in anything about the people on their team. And it becomes really evident, they might get buy-in in a short-term way because that person is useful to them. But it doesn't end well, and it's not satisfying. If you're in a business that's completely reliant on people and people, and getting results through other people, the only way to do that and have them stick and last is by investing in other people and caring about other people. I think over time, misery will prevail, if that's not what's doing it for you, if that's not the satisfaction you get out of your job, it's probably a wrong fit.
Mm-hmm. That's very, I don't know, that's really true. I think the misery will triumph is like you can't really sustain such a position to have people lower than your career for very long. Maybe you're just leaving a lot of things on the table with your career that you could be enjoying that you're not at the moment. So I guess each person has to kind of search their own soul for where they are in this process. But we're all people, and I think we all desire to be in community with one another. So it feels like the most natural thing for us is to come to terms with the idea that if we put people first, then ultimately things are going to run better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on a bad day, it's the timing is always so perfect. I think there have been, a scattering of days in my time where I'm just having like a really bad day. And it's always those moments, I feel like, out of the blue or really randomly, I'll get an email from somebody or a text or a call that's like, hey, I just want to thank you or I want you to know that this impacted me. It's just something small where I guess maybe that's a deposit into my emotional bank account. But either way, the dividend is paying out, Mm-hmm. Those are the most satisfying moments when you realize that somebody has been successful and they credit some of that success to the work that they did with you. That's why I love what I do. And I find that, those moments, even if they're few and far between, really kind of fuel me.
Awesome. So the 5 areas that we really need to focus on, from your 20 years of experience, and I know that there's probably 100 different things that you could tell people, and so these are key. Is that first we have to select our people that we're going to work with and work for us carefully and put them in the right place for their success and for everyone's success. And then second, we have to treat people differently, because they require that in order to be brought to the level where they're reaching their potential and contributing in a satisfying way to the company for their sake and ours. Also, 3, have high expectations for those people, and make sure that we're communicating what the job being done looks like in a regular way. And then in the process of being a leader, showing courage to people demonstrably through the day-to-day operations. So they're really honored to follow you. And then this last one, which is so critical, especially for those of us who have been in a leadership role and had that temptation of just like, having this bad day, or it feels easier to default toward the career or the machine or the list. Put people first, and then that's how you get ahead and have a satisfying career. I mean, these are really amazing things to focus on. It's like a lifetime to do all these things too.
It is, yeah.
Well, Eva, I'm thankful, honestly, for all of this information. And as somebody who's in leadership myself, all through this talk, I feel like I really have been getting a masterclass on management and leadership. And this was a really great opportunity for us all to learn from your experiences. So thank you so much for all of these insights. I wonder, how can people reach out to you? How can people connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn or via my email address at work.
Great. So thank you again for your time and your insights. It was just really great having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you. It was really great talking to you.
Okay, well, as promised, there was a lot of content there, just really powerful stuff shared by Eva. And I know I walked away pretty encouraged by the whole conversation, real fired up to just be a great manager and a great leader. Embarking on the adventure of leadership as a role in the cafe, it can be intimidating. But the insights and experiences that Eva shared and the 5 keys that she gave us at the end there are just a huge help to give confidence to anybody looking for a foundation on which to build their career. And I know that for me, I'm always trying to rebuild a foundation. You can lay a good foundation, but you learn stuff later in your life that you can use to fortify it. These are the types of things that any professional can benefit from looking at again, reinforcing it, making sure that it's stable, because you're only as strong as your foundation. And as a leader and a manager, sometimes the pressure is pretty strong, and you need to have that stability. And so much of what was shared today will help you with that. She talked a lot about developing people, which I love the idea of that being a cornerstone of any leader's career. It's so key to focus on that, since much of what we do in the cafe is temporary. We can serve drinks, but those drinks get consumed, and we can hold events, but they have an end. And even the shops that we open go in and out of business. But the people who we work with and are privileged to be able to serve alongside of are people that we can positively impact, and our influence on them, whether good or bad, hopefully good, is going to stick with them potentially their whole lives. So it really is sort of an enduring work that deserves the kind of focus that Eva gives it. So great words of wisdom that we should all use in our career, for sure. Thanks once more to Eva for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it, and I know all of you do as well. So the show notes are available on keystotheshop.com under the resources tab. It's just a collection of the main points, the key points and takeaways from the content in the conversation today. So I'd encourage you to check that out. And please take a moment also, if you like today's show, share the episode with somebody you think would benefit from it, and give us a rating in iTunes or leave a review. Or both. Any questions or suggestions that you have or comments can be sent to chris@keystotheshop.com, where I will be just anxiously waiting for your email. And so thanks again for joining me. And remember this little pearl of wisdom from Eva today. If you love your position less than you love your people, everything will fall into place. And you know what? That definitely is one of the keys to the shop.